Now, over recent weeks, the UK's political and media class has been fixated on everything from Conservative Party politics to shenanigans in 10 Downing Street to the new Omicron variant. While these are all important issues, it strikes me that what's consistently mattered to millions of voters over recent months is the UK's cost of living crisis. So during this show, at least, that will be our focus. Already, UK inflation, another way of describing the rise in the cost of living, hit 4.2% during October, over twice the Bank of England's official 2% target. The inflation figure for November, to be published this coming Wednesday, is likely to be higher still. Even the Bank of England's chief economist says inflation could soon comfortably exceed 5%, in his words. And if that happened, the cost of living would be rising at its fastest rate across the UK for 30 years. A new survey shows a record number of UK manufacturers are now raising their prices as supply chain cost pressures start to bite, which will push up prices in the shops even more. But it's already clear that as the cost of living has risen during this pandemic, the poor have been hardest hit. Inequalities worsened during lockdown, with the gap between rich and poor getting wider. Over the last 2 years, the wealthiest 5% of families have seen their disposable incomes rise by £3,300 a year, according to a new study from the New Economics Foundation. Half of UK families have seen their disposable income shrink. The poorest 50% of households, meanwhile, have seen their incomes squeezed, becoming £110 poorer. There's a clear pattern here. Many high earners in white-collar jobs, often in London and the South East, have done pretty well out of lockdown, thank you, carrying on their jobs from home while saving money on commuting. Hence the rise in their disposable income once they've paid all their expenses. By contrast, many working in sectors that have suffered most during lockdown, hospitality, tourism and so on, are already relatively poor and perhaps work in the so-called gig economy. So they've lost out on work without qualifying for furlough payments. The New Economic Foundation calculates there are now around 300,000 more families in poverty than there were in early 2019. The gap in incomes across regions has also widened in the last 2 years, with so-called red wall constituencies, those former Labour strongholds that are supposed to benefit from the government's levelling up agenda, the worst hit. Now, the government spent at least £200 billion on COVID support measures, an enormous sum. Yet, according to this new report, even with extensive furlough measures, business support loans and all the rest of it, inequalities still become more acute during this pandemic, with the UK's poorest regions suffering most. So as the government considers new anti-COVID measures, perhaps even renewed lockdown, that's your on-the-money question today. Could anti-COVID measures derail the government's levelling up agenda?